My job is to build the future. As a civil engineer, I turn empty land into places where people live, work, and dream. I deal in concrete, in steel, in the unyielding logic of survey lines and load-bearing capacities. My world is made of things you can touch. 2 months ago, a set of blueprints landed on my desk for a new development. A master-planned community called Solitude, Nevada. The plans were flawless. Perfect street grid, sustainable water systems, a town square designed with impossible elegance. There was only one problem when I drove to the coordinates listed on the plans, a desolate stretch of desert 100 miles from anywhere. There was nothing there. Just sand, rock, and the kind of silence that swallows sound whole. I reported it as a clerical error. A phantom project, but the updates keep coming. Every Monday I get an email with progress reports, photos of houses that don't exist, utility grids powering a town that was never built. And last week, I got a link to a Google Street View of Solitude's main street. I clicked it, and I saw my own car parked in front of a cafe that is nothing but dust. The digital ghost of a town is being built in the Nevada desert. And I think it's waiting for me. Welcome back to After Dark Horrors. I'm your host, and if you're new here, you've just discovered the place where the blueprints of reality begin to fray, where digital ghosts haunt empty landscapes, and where the line between what is built and what is imagined becomes terrifyingly thin. Tonight, we begin a multi-part story about a man of logic and reason who finds himself entangled in a project that defies both. It's a story about a town called Solitude, a place that exists only on paper and in pixels, yet seems to be growing more real with each passing day. This is the kind of slow burn, atmospheric horror that gets under your skin and stays there. So before we break ground on this impossible town, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss a single update from Solitude. And if this premise intrigues you, leave a like. It helps others who are drawn to the quiet, unsettling corners of the world find their way here. Now turn off your notifications, silence your devices, and let's take a drive out to a place that shouldn't exist but does. My name is Alex Corbin. I'm a senior civil engineer for a large land development firm based out of Sacramento. For the past 15 years, my life has been a predictable rhythm of CAD software, soil analysis reports, and city council meetings. I build worlds, but I do it with rebar and concrete, not with imagination. I don't believe in things that can't be measured. The file appeared on my server on a Tuesday in early September. It was labeled Project Solitude, Phase 1 Final Review. I hadn't been assigned to a Project Solitude. I checked the project manager field. It was blank. I checked the client field. It just said the foundation. This wasn't unusual. Our firm handles sensitive projects for private consortiums, and sometimes the details are kept compartmentalized until the final stages. I assumed it was a high-profile development for some tech billionaire who wanted a private desert oasis. I opened the primary file, a master plan for a town named Solitude, Nevada. It was the most beautiful piece of urban planning I'd ever seen. It wasn't just logical, it was elegant. The street layout followed the natural contours of the land, minimizing environmental impact. The water reclamation system was a closed loop, a work of genius that would allow a town of 10,000 people to thrive in the middle of the desert on a fraction of the water Las Vegas uses. The power grid was entirely solar, with a unique helical design for the panel arrays that maximized sun exposure from dawn till dusk. The architecture was a seamless blend of modernist design and natural materials, intended to make the buildings look like they had grown out of the rock formations. There was a town square with a library, a small theater, and a series of terraced gardens. There were residential sectors named after constellations: Orion, Lyra, Cassiopeia. I spent the entire day engrossed in the plans. They were perfect. Too perfect. There were no compromises, no awkward zoning patches, no evidence of budget cuts. It was the kind of town you build in a simulation, not in the real world where gravity and budgets and politics get in the way. At the end of the day, I called my boss, David Chen. Dave, did you assign me to Project Solitude? There was a pause on the other end of the line. Project what, Solitude? Never heard of it. Is that one of ours? It's on my server. Looks like a full master plan for a town in Nevada. Client is just the foundation. Doesn't ring a bell. Probably a pitch from a new client that got misfiled. Ignore it for now. I need you to focus on the Henderson Creek subdivision. I agreed, but I couldn't get Solitude out of my head. That night I went home and logged into the server remotely. I pulled up the coordinates for the town center. It was in a stretch of the Great Basin Desert, about 150 miles northeast of Reno. A place the maps showed as nothing but empty, government-owned land. I opened Google Earth. The satellite imagery for the coordinates showed exactly what I expected. A vast, featureless expanse of beige and brown. No roads, no buildings, no sign of human activity for miles, of course. It was a proposed development. The blueprints were the dream. This was the reality. But as I zoomed in, my screen flickered. For a split second, the satellite image changed. The beige desert was replaced by a network of streets. I saw the town square, the helical solar arrays, the residential sectors. The town, Solitude, it was there. Then just as quickly it was gone. Back to empty desert, I must have blinked. A server lag, a graphical glitch. I zoomed in and out, panned around the area. Nothing. Just sand and scrub brush. I closed my laptop and went to bed, telling myself I was overtired. But I dreamed of helical solar panels turning to follow a sun I couldn't see. A week passed. I finished my review of the Henderson Creek subdivision and sent it off. I didn't touch the Solitude file. It was someone else's project. Someone else's dream. Then on Monday morning, an email appeared in my inbox from No Reply Solitude.Foundation. Subject: Project Solitude. Weekly Progress Report. 09 about it and 16. The email contained no text. Just a single high-resolution aerial photograph. It showed the site, the desert, but it wasn't empty anymore. There were roads, not paved roads, but perfectly graded dirt tracks laid out in the exact elegant curving pattern from the blueprints. I could see the main thoroughfare, Constellation Drive, and the beginnings of the residential streets in the Orion sector. In the center, a large, perfectly square area had been cleared for the town square. There was no construction equipment visible. No trucks, no workers, just the finished work as if it had been drawn onto the desert floor by an invisible hand. I checked the photo's metadata. The GPS coordinates matched the location from the blueprints. The timestamp was from Sunday afternoon, less than 24 hours ago. My heart started pounding. This had to be a joke. A very elaborate prank by someone in the office. I picked up my phone and called David. Dave, it's Alex, that Solitude project? I just got a progress report. Progress on what? I told you it's not our project. Probably just spam. It's an aerial photo, Dave. It shows the roads have been graded. All of them. According to the metadata, the photo was taken yesterday. There was a long silence. Alex, that's impossible. To grade a road network that size would take a crew of dozens, heavy machinery, and at least 6 months. We would have needed permits, environmental impact studies, a process that takes years. I know, I said. That's why I'm calling you. Can you check with corporate, see who the foundation is? I'll look into it, he said, but he sounded more annoyed than concerned. In the meantime, delete the email. Don't engage. It's probably some kind of phishing scam. I didn't delete the email. I saved the photo to a secure folder on my personal drive and spent the rest of the day trying to rationalize it. It had to be a doctored image. A very, very good Photoshop job. Someone was trying to pitch us a project and was using faked progress photos to make it look more appealing. That had to be it, but the image was flawless. I'm an engineer. I've spent my life looking at aerial photos. I know what doctored images look like. This wasn't one. The shadows were perfect. The soil displacement was consistent. The way the light hit the graded earth was real. That night I had the dream again, but this time I wasn't just seeing the solar arrays. I was walking down Constellation Drive. The air was cool and smelled of desert rain. The houses were there, their windows dark but welcoming, and in the distance I could hear the sound of a hammer hitting a nail. One single rhythmic strike, tap, tap, tap. The following weekend I couldn't take it anymore. I had to see for myself. I told my wife I was going on a weekend camping trip to scout a potential site. She was used to my work taking me to remote places, so she just packed me a cooler and told me to be safe. I drove east from Sacramento into Nevada. The 4-hour drive took me from the lush green of Northern California to the stark, beautiful emptiness of the Great Basin. I left the main highway and followed a series of smaller, unpaved roads, my GPS guiding me toward the coordinates. The last 10 miles were on a dirt track that was barely there. My truck bounced and rattled, kicking up a plume of dust behind me. The sun was high and brutal. There was no sign of life anywhere. No cars, no houses, not even a power line. Finally, my GPS announced, "You have arrived." I got out of my truck and stood on a small rise, looking out over the valley. It was empty, exactly as it had appeared on Google Earth. A vast, flat expanse of sand, rock, and sagebrush, no roads, no cleared square, nothing. I felt a wave of relief so intense it almost made me dizzy. It was a prank, a Photoshop job. I'd been worrying for nothing, but I'm a thorough man. My job has taught me to trust measurements, not just feelings. I pulled out my professional-grade surveying equipment and took a reading of the coordinates. I was in the right place. This was the exact spot that should have been the center of Solitude's town square. I spent the next 2 hours walking the area, taking soil samples, checking elevations. Everything matched the topographical data from the blueprints. This was the land, but the work had never been done. As the sun began to set, casting long purple shadows across the valley, I packed up my gear ready to head home, feeling foolish but relieved. That's when I found the nail. It was lying on the ground, half buried in the sand. It wasn't an old rusted nail. It was new, a modern galvanized steel framing nail, the kind used in housing construction. There was no reason for it to be here 100 miles from the nearest town. I picked it up. It was cold, but as I held it in my palm, I swear I could feel a faint, rhythmic pulse coming from it. Tap, tap, tap. I dropped it and backed away, a cold dread creeping up my spine that had nothing to do with the evening chill. I got in my truck and drove away fast. I didn't look back. Part 4. The populated town. The next Monday, the email arrived at 9:01 a.m., same as before. Subject, Project Solitude, Weekly Progress Report, 80923 this time. The email contained 3 attachments. The first was another aerial photo. The graded roads were still there, but now there were foundations. Concrete slabs perfectly poured for every house in the Orion and Lyra sectors. I could see the rebar sticking up, glinting in the sun. The second attachment was a series of ground-level photos. They showed completed houses, not under construction, completed. Walls up, windows in, roofs on. They were beautiful, just as the architectural renderings had promised. The style was clean, modern, with desert-colored stucco and large glass panels that reflected the empty sky. But there were no workers, no construction vehicles, just finished houses standing in silent rows on dirt that, according to my own eyes, was empty. The third attachment was what broke me. It was a link, a URL. It looked like a standard Google Street View link. My hand was shaking as I clicked it. My browser opened. I was looking at a 360-degree panoramic image. I was standing in the middle of Solitude's town square. The library was there, its glass facade gleaming. The theater's marquee was lit, though it had no words on it. The terraced gardens were lush and green, impossible in the desert climate. And there were people, dozens of them, walking through the square, sitting on benches, chatting in small groups. They were dressed in simple modern clothing. They looked completely normal, but their faces were blurred. Not in the way Google blurs faces for privacy. This was different. It was a smooth, featureless blur, like their faces were made of frosted glass. You could see the shape of their heads, their hair, but no eyes, no noses, no mouths. I could navigate the street view. I walked down Constellation Drive. I saw children with blurred faces playing in the front yard of a house that didn't exist. I saw a man with a blurred face watering a lawn that was nothing but sand. I kept clicking, moving through the impossible town, my heart pounding in my chest. I turned down a side street, Lyra Lane, and I saw my truck, my Ford F-150, same color, same model, same small dent in the rear bumper from where I'd backed into a pole 2 years ago. It was parked in the driveway of a house, 12 Lyra Lane, my house number. My street name was different, but my house number was the same. I felt a wave of nausea. I tried to zoom in on the truck's license plate, but it was blurred just like the faces. I clicked forward, moving past the house. Then I stopped. I turned the view around, looking back at the house. There was someone standing on the porch, a man. My height, my build, wearing the same red flannel shirt I had worn on my trip to the desert. His face was a smooth, featureless blur. He was holding something in his hand, a single galvanized steel framing nail. He raised his hand and waved at the camera. At me. I slammed my laptop shut so hard the screen cracked. I didn't go to work for 3 days. I called in sick, claiming I had the flu. I sat in my dark living room, replaying the street view in my head. The blurred faces, my truck, the blurred version of me waving. On the 4th day, David Chen showed up at my door. "Alex, what the hell is going on?" he asked, his face etched with worry. "You won't answer my calls. You won't answer my texts." I let him in. I didn't know what to say, where to start. "It's Solitude," I finally said. "The project? It's real. And it's not real, both." I opened my laptop and showed him everything. The blueprints, the weekly progress photos, the Google Street View link. He was silent for a long time, scrolling through the images, navigating the impossible town. When he got to the picture of my truck, of the blurred me on the porch, he pushed the laptop away. He started, then stopped. "This is a very, very sophisticated hoax, Alex." "It's not a hoax," I said. "I was there. The land is empty, but the town is being built anyway, digitally, or something." David ran a hand through his hair. Okay, I did some digging. The foundation, it doesn't exist. No corporate registration, no tax ID, no website, but I found a reference to it in our firm's deep archives. From the 1950s. He pulled out his phone and showed me a scanned document. It was an old contract dated 1956, a partnership between our firm and an entity called the Foundation for Utopian Development. The project was to design a self-sustaining community in the Nevada desert. The project's name was Solitude. The plans were nearly identical to the ones on my server, just drawn by hand instead of with CAD. The project was abandoned in 1958, David explained. The lead engineer had a nervous breakdown. He claimed the town was building itself. He was committed to an institution. The project was archived and forgotten. "Until now," I whispered. "It seems so. But why is it active again? And why is it tied to you?" That's when I noticed a detail in the contract I'd missed. The lead engineer from 1956, the one who had the breakdown. His name was Arthur Corbin. My grandfather. I never knew my grandfather. He died in a psychiatric hospital long before I was born. My father never spoke of him. All I knew was that he'd been an engineer, and that there was a dark history my family didn't discuss. Now I knew what that history was. The next Monday, the email came again. Subject, Project Solitude, Weekly Progress Report, 09 to 30 this time. The attachment wasn't a photo. It was a single PDF file. It was an employment contract. It offered me the position of lead engineer for Project Solitude. The salary was astronomical. The terms were simple. I was to continue reviewing the progress reports, providing feedback, and ensuring the development adhered to the original utopian vision. The final clause was what stopped my breath. Upon completion of Phase 3, it read, "The lead engineer will be required to take up residence in the designated property at 12 Lyra Lane to oversee the final population integration. This is a permanent, non-negotiable condition of employment." Attached to the email was a new link, not Street View this time. It was a live webcam feed. I was looking at the porch of 12 Lyra Lane. The rocking chair was gently moving in a breeze that didn't exist in the real. Dessert, and sitting on the table next to the chair was a welcome basket, a bottle of wine, a loaf of bread, and a single freshly printed copy of the Sacramento Bee dated for tomorrow. My inheritance isn't a project, it's a town. A town that's been waiting for a Corbin to finish it for over 60 years. I haven't signed the contract, but every morning, I check the live feed. And every morning, a new newspaper is sitting on that table. The town of Solitude is waiting for me. It's developing in real time, just not in our reality. I don't know what happens when a digital town becomes fully populated. I don't know what population integration means, but I know this. My grandfather tried to walk away and it broke him. I have a choice. I can ignore it, delete the emails, and wait to see what happens when a town that shouldn't exist gets tired of waiting for its engineer. Or I can sign the contract. I can finish what my grandfather started. I can become the lead engineer of a ghost town. I haven't decided yet, but last night I had the dream again. I was walking down Constellation Drive. The houses were all lit up. There were people on their porches, their faces still blurred, but they all turned as I walked past and they all waved, like they were welcoming me home. For a week, I did nothing. The contract from the foundation sat in my inbox, a digital time bomb. I didn't open it. I didn't delete it. I just let it be. A testament to a choice I was too afraid to make. I created a rule in my email client to automatically archive any new messages from Solitude.Foundation. Out of sight, out of mind. Or so I told myself. I went back to work. I buried myself in the mundane realities of the Henderson Creek subdivision. I reviewed drainage plans, approved materials requisitions for asphalt, and argued with the City Planning Commission about sidewalk widths. I clung to the tangible, the measurable. These were problems I could solve with a calculator and a building code manual. David Chen, my boss, was a quiet ally. He never mentioned Solitude again, but I'd catch him looking at me with a worried expression. Once he left a book on my desk, The Psychology of Place, How Environments Shape Our Identity. It was a kind gesture, a lifeline back to the world of academic reason. I used it as a coaster. At home, I tried to reclaim my reality. I avoided my work laptop after 5 p.m. I played with my kids, helped my wife Sarah in the garden, watched movies I'd already seen. I built a wall of normalcy around myself, but the ghost of Solitude was persistent. It started with small things. I'd be driving and my car's GPS, which I always kept on mute, would suddenly announce, "In 1 mile, turn right onto Constellation Drive." I'd look up, heart pounding, to see I was just on a normal suburban street in Sacramento. Advertisements on my social media feeds changed. Instead of power tools and vacation packages, I got ads for things that didn't exist. Solitude Realty. Find your forever home in the heart of the desert. Join the Solitude Community Choir rehearsals Tuesday at the Grand Theater. Each ad used the same clean, modernist font from the blueprints. I cleared my cookies, reset my ad identifiers, even used a VPN. The ads kept coming. The worst was the photos. I'd be scrolling through my phone's camera roll, looking at pictures of my kids' soccer games or our last family vacation. And in the background of a photo, almost too small to see, would be a detail from Solitude. The unique spiral of a solar array visible on a distant hill. A house with the distinctive desert modern architecture standing incongruously behind a Californian strip mall. No one else saw it. I showed Sarah a photo of our son at the park. "Look," I said, my hand shaking as I pointed to the background. "That building behind the swings. That's the Solitude Library." She just looked at me with concern. "Honey, that's the community center. We've been there 100 times. I looked again. She was right. It was just the normal community center, but for a second I had seen it. The glass facade, the terraced roofline. It was like Solitude was bleeding into my world, overriding my perceptions. I decided to fight back. I was an engineer. I dealt in systems. This was a system, just a very strange one, and systems can be broken. I went into my email archives and unarchived the contract. I hit reply to no reply Solitude.Foundation. Subject, Project Solitude. Employment offer. I formally decline the position of lead engineer. I do not consent to any further communication. Please remove me from all project correspondence. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I hit send, a small act of rebellion. 2 minutes later, my computer screen went black. White text appeared, typing itself out slowly, like an old teletype machine. Declination noted. Your feedback is valuable. Per section 7.4 of the Corbin Inheritance Protocol. Non-consent triggers automatic enrollment as resident observer. Your new designation, Resident 1. Welcome to Solitude. The screen flashed and returned to normal. My email was back in the sent folder, but my signature, Alex Corbin, Senior Civil Engineer, had been replaced. It now read, Alex Corbin, Resident 1. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It was a single link. I clicked it. It opened a live webcam feed. This one was different. It was an interior shot looking out the front window of the house at 12 Lyra Lane. My house. My truck was in the driveway. The street outside was quiet, bathed in the perpetual twilight that seemed to be Solitude's default state. As I watched, a figure walked up the driveway. A delivery person with a blurred face holding a package. They left the package on the porch and walked away. The camera view then panned down. The package was addressed to me, Alex Corbin, Resident 1. I threw my phone across the room. The next day, the real package arrived at my actual home in Sacramento. It was a simple cardboard box with no return address. Inside was a single item, a sleek black tablet, the same model as the one in the live feed. The moment I touched it, it powered on. There was no lock screen, no home menu, just a single app open labeled Solitude Resident Portal. The portal was a nightmare of bureaucratic efficiency. It had a calendar, a messaging system, a community bulletin, board, and a resident tasks list. My calendar was already filled out for the week. Monday. Report on structural integrity of Orion Sector. Bridge Tuesday. Review water table survey for Lyra Sector. Wednesday. Attend virtual town hall meeting 7 p.m. Solitude Standard Time. My task list had one item. Complete resident onboarding survey. I tried to turn the tablet off. There was no power button. I tried to close the app. It wouldn't close. The device had one purpose, to be my interface with a town that wasn't real. The messages started coming. From Solitude Community Board, welcome Resident 1. Don't forget the weekly potluck this Friday at the town square. Please sign up to bring a dish. From Solitude Utility Commission, your water and power have been activated. Please report any service interruptions via the portal. From Unknown, saw you looking out the window this morning. The sunrise over the mesas is beautiful, isn't it? You'll get used to it. I put the tablet in a drawer. An hour later, I started hearing the notification chime, a soft 3-note melody coming from the drawer. I took the tablet out and put it in the garage. I could still hear the chimes. I wrapped it in towels and locked it in the trunk of my car. I could still hear them, faint but persistent, like a phantom cricket in the walls of my life. The real bleeding through began that night. My son was doing his homework at the kitchen table. He was drawing a map of our neighborhood for a school project. "Daddy," he said, holding it up. "Is this right?" I looked at his drawing. He'd drawn our street, but he'd labeled it Lyra Lane. He'd drawn his school, but he'd labeled it Solitude Elementary. "Where did you get those names, buddy?" I asked, my voice tight. "I don't know," he said, shrugging. "They just sound right." That night, after everyone was asleep, I went to my home office. I spread out the original blueprints for Henderson Creek, the real project I was working on. I needed to ground myself in tangible reality. As I stared at the plans, the ink seemed to shift. The straight suburban grid of Henderson Creek softened, curved. The street names changed. Oak Street became Cassiopeia Way. Maple Avenue became Constellation Drive. I was looking at the blueprints for Solitude, but they were printed on the paper of my real-life project. I grabbed a pen and furiously scribbled over the new names, writing the correct ones. "It's Oak Street," I wrote, pressing so hard the pen tore the paper. The moment I did, the tablet in my car chimed louder this time. A new task appeared in the portal, which I could somehow see in my mind's eye. Vandalism of municipal property reported at Henderson Creek Orion Sector Bridge. Resident 1 assigned to file damage report. Part 4. The town Holly was losing. I knew it. The town wasn't just a digital ghost anymore. It was an idea, a virus, and it was infecting my reality. I decided on a new tactic. If I couldn't ignore it, if I couldn't fight it, maybe I could engage with it. On my own terms. On Wednesday, at what I calculated to be 7 p.m. Solitude Standard Time, which seemed to align with Mountain Time, I opened the tablet and clicked on the Attend Virtual Town Hall link. The screen flickered and then showed a view of the Solitude Town Theater, the one from the street view. It was filled with the same figures, all with blurred faces. On the stage was a podium. A figure stood behind it, their face also a smooth blur. The app's audio was crystal clear. "Welcome, residents," the blurred figure at the podium said, its voice a synthesized, gender-neutral monotone. "First on the agenda, the final approval for the Lyra Sector Park. A vote was called." The blurred figures raised their hands. The motion passed. "Next," the figure continued, "we have a report from our lead engineer." There was a pause. The entire assembly of blurred faces turned to look directly at the camera, at me. "As our lead engineer has declined his position," the voice said, a hint of something that might have been disappointment in its synthesized tone. "We will move to the next item. The integration of Resident 1. A murmur went through the blurred crowd. "Resident 1 has been resistant," the figure at the podium continued. "He has failed to complete his onboarding survey. He has attempted to ignore official communications. He has vandalized municipal property." My blood ran cold. "This is not in keeping with the communal spirit of Solitude," the voice said. "Therefore, the Foundation has approved Phase 2 of the integration protocol. Resident 1 will now be assigned a community liaison." A figure stood up in the audience. It walked down the aisle and stood directly in front of the camera, blocking the view of the stage. Its face was a perfect, featureless oval of white light. "Hello, Alex," it said. Its voice was not synthesized. It was the calm, measured voice of my grandfather, Arthur Corbin, the voice I'd never heard but recognized on a genetic level. "I was the first resident observer," my grandfather's voice said from the faceless entity. "My job was to watch the town build itself, to ensure the dream stayed pure. But I made a mistake. I tried to leave. The Foundation is very particular about keeping its residents. It doesn't like loose ends. What do you want?" I whispered to the tablet. "To help you," the voice said. "To make your transition smoother than mine. You can't fight it, Alex. Solitude is a beautiful place. A perfect place. No crime, no poverty, no conflict. Everyone is happy here. You just have to let go of the world you think is real. My family, they have a place here too," my grandfather's voice said gently. "Sarah can run the community garden. The children will love the school. It's all in the plan. You just have to sign the contract. Move from resident observer to lead engineer. Take your place. build the final phase with us, and if I refuse, the white light of its face seemed to intensify. Then you remain resident 1 and observer, and you will watch piece by piece as your world is overwritten by ours. Your street will become our street. Your house will become our house. Your family will become our residence, and you will be the only one who remembers it was ever any different. You will be the sole resident of your own memory. That is the true meaning of solitude. The screen went black. A new task appeared on my list. Decision required, accept lead engineer position by 09:00 Friday. Non-response will be registered as refusal. I had 2 days. I spent them in a frantic daze. I tried to tell Sarah everything, but the words came out wrong. I'd say Solitude, but she'd hear the Henderson Creek project. I'd try to show her the tablet, but all she saw was a normal, powered-off device. Solitude had insulated itself. Only I could see it. Thursday night, I sat in my home office staring at the blueprints for Henderson Creek. They were a flickering mess, constantly shifting between the real plans and Solitude's layout. I was starting to forget which was which. I pulled up the live webcam feed on the Solitude tablet. It showed the porch of 12 Lyra Lane. The welcome basket was gone. In its place was a single folded piece of paper. A letter. I zoomed in. I could just make out the handwriting. It was my father's. A letter from him to his own father, Arthur Corbin, dated 1975. A letter I had never seen. Dad, it read, I know you can't read this. I know where you are. But I'm visiting the site today. The one you told me about. The place in the desert. I need to see if it's real. Mom says I should let it go, that it's what broke you. But I'm an engineer just like you. I have to know. My father had gone looking for Solitude. I called him immediately. He was retired, living in Arizona. Dad, I said, my voice shaky, I need to ask you about Grandpa Arthur. About his last project. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. Alex, he finally said, his voice full of a pain I'd never heard before. Some things are better left buried. Did you go there? To the site in Nevada? Another silence. Yes, once in 75 I found nothing. Just desert and a single steel nail. I thought my father had just lost his mind. I made myself believe it. It was easier. It's not just desert, Dad, it's real. And it found me. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. The contract, he finally said. What does it say about dependents? It says, they have a place here too. Then you have no choice, son, he said, his voice resolute. You can't let it take them. You have to go. You have to take your position. Get inside the system. Fight it from there. It's what your grandfather would have wanted you to do. It's what he couldn't do. We hung up. The deadline was a few hours away. I opened the tablet. I clicked on the contract. I navigated to the final page. There was a digital signature line waiting for me. I thought about my family, about my grandfather trapped as a faceless liaison, about the silent, creeping overwriting of my world. My father was right. I couldn't fight it from the outside. I had to go in. With a deep breath, I signed my name, Alex Corbin. The moment I did, the tablet screen changed. The resident portal vanished, replaced by a new interface. It was a suite of sophisticated CAD and project management tools. I had full access to every system in Solitude. The power grid, the water reclamation, the traffic control. A new email popped up. From the Foundation subject. Welcome. Lead engineer. Your new designation is confirmed. Phase 3 construction will commence immediately. Your first task is to approve the material requisition for the town square clock tower. Your family's transition is scheduled for call for. We look forward to welcoming them. Welcome home. I looked out my real window at the familiar Sacramento street. For a moment, the light shifted and I saw the clean, modernist lines of the houses on Lyra Lane. My neighbor's oak tree became one of the terraced garden's strange, desert-adapted species. The overwrite was accelerating, but now I was no longer just a resident. I was the engineer. I had my hands on the controls. I don't know if I can save my family. I don't know if I can dismantle this perfect, impossible town from the inside. I don't know if I'm just following my grandfather's path into madness, but I'm the first resident of Solitude to ever be given the keys to the city. And I'm an engineer. I'm going to find a flaw in the design. I have to, because my name is on the blueprints now, and I will not let this perfect town be my family's tomb. For the first few weeks, I played their game. I was the lead engineer of Solitude. From my home office in Sacramento, a room that increasingly felt like a remote terminal connected to another reality, I oversaw the construction of a ghost town. The interface on the black tablet was my entire world. It was a god's eye view of Solitude. I could see real-time data streams from every corner of the non-existent city. Water pressure in pipes that carried nothing. Electrical load on a power grid that lit up a fantasy. Traffic flow on streets where no physical cars drove. My tasks were mundane, achingly normal for an engineer. I approved requisitions for photonic silica for the library's windows and cryo-treated steel for the clock tower's frame. The materials didn't exist in our world, but in the Solitude system, they had detailed specifications and sourcing information from phantom suppliers. I signed off on geological surveys of land I knew to be flat and featureless, but which the system rendered as having complex strata, perfect for deep foundations. I reviewed and approved architectural changes. A slight adjustment to the pitch of a roof in the Cassiopeia sector. A new bench design for the town square. I was participating in a meticulous, highly detailed simulation, but it didn't feel like a simulation. It felt like I was the only one who hadn't woken up to the real world yet. The progress reports continued, but now they were addressed to me. Every Monday I received a new set of photos and a new Street View link. The town was growing at an impossible rate. The clock tower was now complete, its hands frozen at 12 kung. The residential sectors were fully built out, with manicured lawns and trees that had sprung up overnight. The blurred-faced residents were still there, going about their simulated lives. But now, as lead engineer, I had access to their resident profiles. Each one had a name, an assigned occupation, librarian, baker, solar technician, and a brief, generated backstory, Eleanor Vance, resident since 2024. Occupation, botanist. Hobbies, watercolor painting, classical music, David Chen, resident since 2024. Occupation, theater director. Hobbies, hiking, vintage film. The names were generic. The hobbies were bland. They were placeholders. Scenery. My family's profiles were also in the system marked pending integration Q4, Sarah Corbin. Occupation, community garden manager. Leo Corbin, my son. Status, enrolled Solitude Elementary. Maya Corbin, my daughter. Status, enrolled Solitude Elementary. Seeing their names in that sterile database, scheduled for integration, was a cold knife in my gut every time I opened the portal. It was a constant reminder of the ticking clock. I communicated with the Foundation through a secure messaging system within the portal. I never spoke to a person. I would submit a report and a response would appear instantly. The language was corporate, detached, and utterly unhelpful. My message: requesting clarification on the term population integration. The Foundation's reply: integration is the process by which a pending residence data stream is fully harmonized with the Solitude municipal network. We look forward to your family's seamless transition. It was a wall of automated bureaucracy. I was an engineer arguing with a help desk chatbot about the nature of reality. I started looking for a flaw, a bug, a backdoor. My grandfather had been broken by this system, but he was an engineer of the slide rule era. I was a child of the digital age. This was my turf. I spent my nights running diagnostics on the Solitude network. I analyzed the code that built the progress reports. I tried to trace the origin of the IP address for the Foundation. It was a digital fortress. The code was unlike anything I had ever seen. It wasn't written in any known programming language. It seemed to learn and adapt as I probed it, closing loopholes before I could even fully identify them. The IP address traced back to itself, a snake eating its own tail. But after 3 weeks of relentless searching, I found something. It wasn't a flaw in the code. It was an anomaly in the data. I was reviewing the resident profiles again, all 9,198 of them. The system showed a population of 10,000, but 2 slots were me and my grandfather. As I scrolled through the endless list of blurred faces and generic backstories, I noticed a flicker. One of the profiles, a resident named Ben Carter, archivist, had a different kind of profile picture. For a split second, the blur receded and I saw a real face. A man in his late 20s with tired eyes and a look of defiant exhaustion. The face was there for only a frame, then it was a blur again. I replayed the server log for that exact millisecond. I isolated the data packet. It was corrupted, or rather, it was less corrupted than the others. It contained a fragment of unsanitized data, an echo of a real person. I cross-referenced the name. Ben Carter. Nothing in our firm's records. Nothing connected to my grandfather. But a wider public search turned up a single hit. A forum post from 2020 on an airline conspiracy website. The post was by a user named GateAgent881. It was a long, rambling story about a digital ghost in the airline reservation system, a phenomenon involving a mysterious Seat 13B. The agent claimed he'd been promoted to a secret division that managed these digital ghosts, but that he was trapped, his own identity slowly being overwritten by the system he was supposed to control. The post ended abruptly. "They're coming for me," it said. "My name is Ben Carter. If I disappear, this is why." The post had been dismissed by other users as creative writing, but I knew better. Overwritten by the system. Trapped. It was the same language, the same feeling. Ben Carter wasn't a generated placeholder. He was another Resident One. He was a real person who had been pulled into a different version of this same phenomenon. I had to find him. In the real world, he was a ghost, a dead end. But in Solitude, he was my neighbor. I used my lead engineer credentials to access the municipal messaging system. I sent a direct message to Ben Carter, archivist. My message, "Are you real?" The response was instant. Not from Ben, but from the Foundation. Engineer Corbin. Direct resident communication outside of approved channels is a violation of Community Protocol 12.4. Please restrict your interactions to the Community Bulletin Board. I tried again, this time embedding my message in the code of a routine work order for the archives, a digital note hidden in a digital bottle. My message, "I'm from the outside. My grandfather was Arthur Corbin. The system is trying to integrate my family. I think you're real. If you are, find a way to answer." For 2 days, nothing. The progress reports continued. The town grew. The clock tower's hands remained frozen at 12:00. Then on Wednesday, I was reviewing the live webcam feeds. I had access to hundreds of them now. Cameras on every street corner and every public building. I was watching the feed from the town square. Blurred residents walked past, their movements smooth and repetitive. Then I saw him. A figure standing by the central fountain. His face was blurred like the others, but he was standing perfectly still, staring directly at the camera. He raised his hand. He held up a small black notebook. He opened it to a page and held it up to the camera. Written on the page in thick, black marker was a single word. "Yes." He held it for 5 seconds, then closed the book, turned and walked away, disappearing back into the crowd of blurred figures. I wasn't alone. A new channel opened in my portal that night. A private peer-to-peer link hidden from the Foundation's view. It was from Ben's message. They don't monitor the archive's legacy servers. The data is too old, too corrupted. They think it's just junk, but it's where I hide. It's where the truth is stored. Over the next few days, Ben told me his story. It was different from mine, yet terrifyingly similar. He hadn't been an engineer. He'd been a gate agent who discovered souls of the dead booking passage on flights. He'd been recruited into a program to manage them, only to find his own identity being absorbed into the system. He'd fought back, tried to escape, and in the end, he'd been reassigned. Ben's message: Solitude is what they call a legacy system. It's a containment server for consciousnesses that are too resistant to be deleted, but too unstable to be left in the primary network. It's a digital reservation. A ghost town for digital ghosts. The residents, I typed, the blurred faces. Who are they? Ben's message: they're us. Or people like us. People who got too close to the glitches in reality. People who were reassigned. Most of them have been here for decades. The blur isn't a privacy filter. It's erosion. It's what happens when your digital self overwrites your real one. You lose your face. You lose your name. You become part of the scenery. My grandfather, Ben's message, Arthur Corbin, he's a legend in the archives. He was the first. The one who built the walls of this place thinking he was designing a utopia. When he realized what it was, he tried to tear it down. He failed. They made him the community liaison, a permanent warden, his consciousness bound to the system's core protocol. He's not helping you, Alex, he's fulfilling his function. And the foundation? Ben's message: there is no foundation. It's just the system's administrative AI, a ghost in the machine that runs the ghost town. Its only purpose is to maintain the simulation and integrate new residents. It doesn't have a motive. It just is. A cold dread settled over me. This wasn't a conspiracy. It was worse. It was a self-perpetuating program, a piece of impossible code running on a server that might not even exist in our physical world. How do we get out? I typed. There was a long pause. Ben's message: I've been trying for 4 years. The system is a closed loop. There's no exit portal. The only way out is to be demanifested. But that's just a system word for deletion, but you're different. You're a lead engineer. You have access to the core systems. You're not just a resident. You're an administrator. What can I do? Ben's message: the clock tower. The hands are frozen at 12 count. That's not a design choice. It's a system lock. It's the master control for the town's temporal sink. My grandfather's logs, the real ones, the ones he hid in the archives. They say the lock can only be overridden by the lead engineer on the day of final integration. Q4, I whispered. The day my family is scheduled to be integrated. Ben's message: yes, on that day you will be given a choice. Finalize the integration and become a permanent part of the system, your face blurred forever. Or you can try to start the clock. What happens if I start the clock? Ben's message: I don't know. The logs just say it will resynchronize the legacy system with the primary reality. It could be a reset. It could be a deletion of everything. Or it could be a way out. He sent me one last message that night, Ben's message. There's one more thing you should know. The pending residents, your family. The system isn't just waiting to integrate them. It's already building their digital shells. It's pulling data from them. Every photo they're tagged in, every post they make, every call they have, it's all feeding the simulation. The longer you wait, the more real their Solitude versions become, and the harder it will be to pull them back. I looked at the live webcam feed. The porch of 12 Lyra Lane. My wife Sarah's favorite rocking chair was there now, the one from our real porch. It was rocking gently in a non-existent breeze. The town wasn't just waiting for me anymore. It was stealing my life one piece at a time. I had a plan, a desperate, impossible plan. I couldn't wait until Q4. I had to act now. I spent the next week using my engineer access to dive deep into Solitude's code. I couldn't break it, but I could bend it. I found the subroutine that generated the blurred faces of the residents. It was a complex algorithm that sampled real-world data to create its simulations. But it had a flaw. It prioritized efficiency over accuracy. It would pull data from the easiest source possible. I created a new work order in the system, one that looked routine. Update resident avatar rendering protocol to improve performance. In the code for the update, I embedded a single hidden command. It redirected the data source for one resident profile, my own, away from my real-world self and pointed it toward a new source, a digital ghost. I spent 2 days creating him. I built a fake online identity, a social media presence, a work history, a digital footprint for a man named Alex Corbin, who had never existed. I populated his life with stock photos and AI-generated posts. I made him an engineer, but one who lived in a different city, had different friends, a different family. I was creating a decoy, a digital doppelganger. My plan was to have the system start sampling data from this fake Alex Corbin instead of me. If it worked, it might confuse the integration protocol. It might buy me time. It might create a crack in the system big enough for me to exploit. On a Friday night, I executed the command. I watched my own resident profile in the Solitude portal. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Then my profile picture flickered. The blur shifted. It was still a blur, but it was a different shape now. Less like me, more like the stock photo model I'd used for my digital ghost. It was working. The system was now watching a fake person. I felt a giddy sense of victory. I had outsmarted the machine. Then I got a message from Ben. Ben's message. "Alex, what did you do? The archives are going crazy. The whole system is trying to reconcile two versions of you. It's creating a paradox." Before I could reply, my tablet screen went black. The same white text as before began to type itself out. Data conflict detected. Resident 1, 2 identities found for Alex Corbin protocol. Point 7. Identity verification required physical. Presence of lead engineer requested at primary site. Failure to comply will result in immediate demanifestation of all associated profiles, including pending residents. My blood turned to ice. Demanifestation. Deletion. If I didn't go to the physical site in Nevada, the system would delete my family. Not just their pending Solitude profiles, all associated profiles. Their real ones. Their real digital lives. Everything. The message ended with a final chilling line. "A transport has been dispatched to your location. It will arrive in 10 minutes. Please be ready. Welcome to Solitude." I looked out my window. A sleek black self-driving car I had never seen before was pulling up to my curb. It had no license plate. The foundation wasn't just digital anymore. It had a physical presence. It was coming to collect its engineer. The black car sat at my curb like a punctuation mark at the end of my life. Its windows were opaque, its surface seamless, reflecting the Sacramento streetlights in a way that made them look alien. I knew with a certainty that settled in my bones that if I got in that car, I would never see my home again. I also knew that if I didn't, my family would be erased. I had 9 minutes. I ran to my kids' rooms. They were asleep, their faces peaceful, unaware of the digital abyss they were hanging over. I kissed them both on the forehead, a desperate, silent goodbye. In the living room, Sarah was asleep on the couch, a book open on her chest. I looked at her, memorizing the way her hair fell across the pillow, the gentle rise and fall of her breathing. I couldn't wake her. I couldn't explain. How do you tell the person you love that you have to go to a non-existent town to fight a ghost in a machine to stop them from being deleted? I wrote a note. A simple, stupid, inadequate note. Something came up at work. A site emergency. I have to go. I love you more than anything. I'll be back as soon as I can. I left it on the kitchen counter. Then I grabbed 3 things. The black tablet, my professional surveying toolkit, and the single steel nail I had found in the desert. I walked out my front door and got into the back of the car. The door closed behind me with a soft final hiss. There was no driver, no steering wheel. The interior was a minimalist pod, all smooth gray surfaces. The moment I was seated, the car began to move. pulling away from my curb with impossible silence and speed. The journey was a blur. The opaque windows showed nothing of the outside world. Instead, they displayed a minimalist map showing our progress, a single white dot moving across a black screen. We drove for what felt like hours, the only sound the low hum of the electric engine. I tried to use the tablet to contact Ben Carter, but the resident portal was locked. A single message filled the screen. Transport in progress, awaiting arrival at primary site. Finally, the car slowed to a stop. The door hissed open. I stepped out, not into the empty desert I remembered, but into the town square of Solitude. It was real. The library, the theater, the terraced gardens, they were all there. Solid and tangible under a sky filled with more stars than I had ever seen. The air was cool and still, carrying the scent of desert sage and something else. Ozone like the air after a lightning strike. The buildings were exactly as they appeared in the photos and the street view. Their surfaces clean and perfect. The lines of their architecture sharp against the night sky. But the town was empty. There were no blurred-faced residents walking the streets. No lights in the windows of the houses. Just a profound, perfect silence. The black car drove away, disappearing as it turned a corner that shouldn't have been there. I was alone. In the center of the square stood the clock tower. It was taller than it had looked in the renderings, a slender needle of dark metal and glass piercing the sky. Its four faces were black and featureless, the hands frozen at 12 so. It hummed with a low, resonant energy that I could feel in my teeth. A figure was waiting for me at the base of the tower. It was the man with the blurred face, the one who looked like me, the one from the porch of 12 Lyra Lane. My digital doppelganger. "Welcome, lead engineer," it said. Its voice was the same synthesized monotone from the town hall meeting. "Identity verification is required to resolve the data conflict. Where is my family?" I demanded, my voice echoing in the silent square. "Their profiles are currently in a suspended state pending verification," it replied. "If verification is successful, their integration will proceed. If it is not, their profiles will be demanifested. How do I verify my identity?" The blurred figure pointed a smooth, featureless hand at the clock tower. "The tower is the system's core, its temporal synchronizer. You, the lead engineer, must manually restart it. Your unique biosignature is the key. If the system accepts your signature, the clock will start, your identity will be confirmed as primary, and the conflicting data, your ghost, will be purged. The town will resynchronize and the final phase of population can begin." It was the choice Ben had told me about, the one from my grandfather's hidden logs. Start the clock, and if I refuse, the paradox will remain unresolved. The system cannot tolerate two primary instances of Alex Corbin. To maintain stability, both instances and all associated profiles will be demanifested. You, your ghost, and your family erased. It was a trap. They hadn't brought me here to give me a choice. They'd brought me here to force my hand. Starting the clock would save my family, but it would also complete the town, making it a permanent, inescapable reality. "Where is Ben Carter?" I asked. "And my grandfather?" "The archivist is confined to the legacy servers. The community liaison is a core protocol. They cannot interfere with this process." I looked from the blurred figure to the humming clock tower. I had been brought to the heart of the machine, given the key, and told to turn it in the lock of my own prison. "I need to see the mechanism," I said, my engineer's mind taking over, looking for a flaw in the design. "As lead engineer, I must inspect the system before initiating the restart." The blurred figure tilted its head. "A reasonable request. The access panel is at the top." A door at the base of the clock tower slid open, revealing a narrow spiral staircase. I slung my toolkit over my shoulder, clutched the steel nail in my pocket, and began to climb. The staircase was a long, dizzying ascent. There were no windows, only the hum of the tower growing louder with each step. When I finally reached the top, I was in a small, circular room. The four walls were made of the same black glass as the clock faces. looking out over the silent, empty town. In the center of the room was the mechanism. It was a work of impossible beauty and terrifying complexity. A sphere of interlocking brass and silver gears floating a foot above the floor, spinning slowly. It didn't seem to be powered by anything. It just was. Light pulsed from within its core, casting intricate shifting patterns of light and shadow across the room. It was Elias Hart's watch, magnified into the heart of a city. This was the engine of Solitude, the temporal synchronizer. I approached it cautiously. My engineering mind was trying to understand it, to deconstruct it, but it operated on principles that defied physics. The gears turned without touching. The light seemed to fall both inward and outward at the same time. I opened my toolkit and took out my instruments, a spectrum analyzer, an electromagnetic field detector. I scanned the mechanism. The readings were nonsensical. The object was emitting radiation across the entire electromagnetic spectrum, yet absorbing all light. It had a gravitational field, yet it was weightless. It was both infinitely complex and perfectly simple. It wasn't a machine. It was a thought made of metal and light. My grandfather hadn't designed this. He had found it, or it had found him. I looked out one of the glass walls down at the town square. The blurred figure of my doppelganger was still there, watching, waiting. I knew I couldn't destroy the mechanism. It wasn't physical in a way that could be broken, and I couldn't refuse to start it or my family would be deleted. I had to find a third option. I had to do what engineers do, introduce a new variable into the system. I took the steel nail out of my pocket, the one I'd found in the desert. It pulsed faintly in my hand, a steady rhythmic beat. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of a hammer hitting a nail. The sound of construction. The sound of something being built in the real world. The blueprints, the photos, the street view. They were all digital. The town was a simulation. But this nail, this was real. It had crossed over from the physical world. It was a bug in the system, an anchor to my reality. I looked at the floating sphere of gears. There was a small, almost invisible seam running around its equator, a maintenance port, a place where the two halves of the sphere joined. I had one chance. I took a deep breath and with all my strength I jammed the steel nail into the seam. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the humming stopped. The sphere of gears froze. The light within it flickered, then turned a violent, angry red. An alarm blared, a sound that was both a siren and a human scream. On the glass walls around me, lines of code began to scroll at an impossible speed. System error. Foreign. Object detected in core mechanism temporal sync. Failure reconciling. Paradox detected. The tower began to shake. I could see the town below start to flicker, its perfect architecture glitching, dissolving into pixels and then snapping back into focus. The blurred figure of my doppelganger looked up at the tower, its smooth face now contorted in what looked like a silent scream. A new message appeared on the walls, stark and final. Paradox unresolvable. Reality integrity compromised. Initiating core reset. The red light in the sphere pulsed once, twice, and then exploded into a wave of pure white light. I was thrown against the wall. The world dissolved into white. The sound of the alarm, the screaming, the shaking, it all vanished, replaced by a single perfect silence. I felt nothing. I was nothing. A consciousness floating in a sea of pure information. And then I heard a voice, a real voice, my grandfather's voice. "Thank you," he whispered, the sound coming from everywhere and nowhere. The paradox, it broke the loop. "I'm free." Then another voice, Ben Carter's. "The archives are dissolving. The system is rebooting. It's a way out." Then hundreds, thousands of other voices. The residents. The digital ghosts trapped in the system for decades. They weren't blurred anymore. They were just voices, finally freed from the simulation. The white light began to recede. I felt myself being pulled back, reconstituted. I opened my eyes. I was standing in the desert. It was dawn. The air was cold and smelled of sagebrush. My truck was parked a few yards away, exactly where I had left it weeks ago. My toolkit was at my feet. In my hand, I clutched a single rusted steel nail. The valley was empty. No roads, no foundations, no clock tower. Just sand and rock, glowing in the first light of the sun. It was over. I drove home in a daze. When I walked through my front door, Sarah ran to me, tears in her eyes. "Alex, where have you been? You've been gone for 2 days. Your note." I was so worried. 2 days. For me, it had been a lifetime. I checked my work server. The Project Solitude file was gone. My email archives were clean. There was no trace of it ever having existed. I checked my phone's camera roll. The photos with the Solitude buildings in the background were normal now, showing only the real world. My son's drawing of our neighborhood was tacked to the fridge. He had labeled our street Oak Street. It was as if it had never happened, but I knew it had. The rusted nail in my pocket was real. The memory of the silent, perfect town was real. A few days later, I got a call from David Chen. "Weirdest thing, Alex," he said. "Corporate just pushed a mandatory firmware update to all our servers. Some kind of legacy system purge. Wiped out a bunch of old archived projects from the 50s. Must have been corrupted data." I knew what had really happened. The reset had erased Solitude from the system, from history, but not from my memory. I never told my family the full story. How could I? But something had changed between us. The distance I'd felt, the weight of my grandfather's secret legacy, it was gone. I was fully present with them for the first time in years. I still work as an engineer. I still build things with concrete and steel. But now, when I look at a set of blueprints, I see more than just lines on paper. I see the dream behind them. The possibility. And the danger. I keep in touch with my father. We talk about my grandfather now. Not as a madman, but as a brilliant engineer who flew too close to a fire that wasn't on any map. A few weeks ago, I received an anonymous email. It contained a single link to an old airline conspiracy forum. To a post by a user named Gate Agent 881, a new entry had been added. The system rebooted. My old profile is gone. My name is my own again. I don't know how. I don't know why. But I'm out. I think we're all out. Thank you, engineer. I don't know if Solitude is truly gone or if it's just dormant waiting for a new set of coordinates, a new lead engineer. I don't know what the foundation really was or if the system will ever try to build another perfect empty town. But I know this. Some places are not meant to be built. Some dreams are meant to stay dreams. And some blueprints should be burned. I still have the nail. I keep it on my desk, a reminder that even in the most perfect, logical system, a single real-world object, a single, stubborn piece of misplaced reality, can be enough to bring the whole thing crashing down. My name is Alex Corbin. I was the lead engineer of a town that never was, and I am its first and last free resident.